Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast. We're the Commander Clash crew, Richard, Seth, Krim, and me, Tomer. We discuss Commander-related topics, and today we're going to be discussing blue board wipes in Commander. We're going to go over our favorites / the ones we know about that are Cyclonic Rift and others. For a lot of people in Commander, blue board wipes start and end with Cyclonic Rift. And and then people will either play Cyclonic Rift and that's it for like their mono blue decks, and they'll just go straight to colorless board wipes instead. Or if you're like me, you actually like running multiple different kinds, especially if you're on a budget, because Cyclonic Rift is like $1 bajillion these days. So minor spoiler ahead, it's going to be a lot of me trying to convince the rest of the table to expand their horizons a little bit. And we're going to be doing it, as usual, with a tier list, because we want people to click on these videos / listen to them on Spotify, and tier lists are that secret sauce to make that happen. Gotcha. So we got at the lowest tier is D, which is don't play. We don't run it in our decks, and if we see it in our decks, we probably try to get it out, cut it, before we actually run it, or if we do see it in our hands, we try to discard it to gamble or faithless looting or whatever. C is average. These are mediocre filler cards. They might make the cut in very specific instances, such as if we're doing like an ultra budget restriction, then maybe we'll run it. B is good in only certain decks. So these cards are very good cards, but they only fit in, let's say, a specific archetype. And you wouldn't run it in just like a generic deck. At A, we have really good overall. So these cards are very good in a large percentage of decks. These aren't great in every deck, but they're very good in the decks that they fit well in, the certain archetypes they fit well in, and they probably fit multiple archetypes. S, finally, is the highest category that we have. It's an auto-include. These are, like, if we're playing a blue deck, we're going to be running this board wipe as much as possible. Maybe not like 100% of the time because we have like a certain budget restriction or we have some sort of theme restriction going on, but we have to basically make a reason why we wouldn't want to run these cards. So that's our tier list. Standard stuff, D to S. And before we jump into the cards, though, I just wanted to point out that if you want to help out this channel, help us grow on Spotify, on YouTube, and all that great stuff, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support the show in another way with your monies, you can give us your monies and we'll give you playmats and merchandise and stuff at mtggoldfishmerch.com. And you can get stuff like the playmats that are stapled onto Richard's wall and stuff. And you can get t-shirts and deck boxes and sleeves and perhaps other things, tokens. I don't know what we have. We have lots of stuff in there. So you can buy stuff there.
What if we cut leaves off your plants and then dry them and sell them like like dried herbs?
Yeah. Or a salad. Make them into a salad. Ooh.
I thought you were like, oh no, the poor plants, they need to be watered every single week.
Plants, they regenerate.
No, you're like,
you
let's butcher the plants.
It was more that we were hungry and just wanted to eat the plant. That's all.
What is this capitalist dystopia? Anyway, the plants are going to stay fine. Maybe you should buy something so the plants are we don't have to resort to selling off the plants. I don't know. Whatever will help you.
Gets it every day. A playmat's not sold. You live with that.
Snip, snip. Anyway, so with that old stuff out of the way, let's jump into the cards. And Richard, kick us off with, the card we got to get out of the way first.
All right. Everyone's favorite, Cyclonic Rift. 2 mana, bounce a non-land permanent you don't control, overload 7, bounce everything. S's across the board. This is like the truest of true staples. I don't know what more we have to say about this. You have to have a pretty good reason to not have Rift in your deck and you're playing blue. Like you're actively bringing down the power level of your deck. You're like, it's too good. Or it's like budget restriction. But otherwise it goes right in.
Yeah, this is like an auto include. So
yeah,
even if you're not in a mono blue, like it's just like
yeah. It's above S. This is band tier. If anything,
This
I
is like we
would
talk about
prefer this
banning
to get
every
banned.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like ban worthy. It's just like
No.
it's just at least for Commander Clash, we have a very specific criteria of what we want to be doing with our games. We want to make sure they're entertaining for the viewers. And if people complain too much about Cyclonic Rift, then we consider maybe taking it off for a season. Right now we have it on, and I don't think there's that much complaints, honestly. I think it's just like when people start doing like Cyclonic Rift and start looping it with like Archaeomancer and stuff like that, then it gets pretty obnoxious and nobody wants to watch that episode. But like if you're just casting it as a one-off, I think honestly like an easy like hot fix for this card, like if you wanna alchemy it, you could just say like it exiles when it's cast, you know? Like then I think that would take a lot of the field bads out. It'll still be
No,
like
but
a
then,
busted card.
but then Tomer, I wouldn't be able to loop it with Archaeomancy.
I know. What a shame. What a pity.
They'll bring it down to S tier instead of S++.
Oh, that'd make it a C. Average.
I mean, I'm not going to discuss too much of power level. Like, if you play Commander, you've seen this card, you know why it's so good. Asymmetrical board wipe at instant speed also makes somebody discard at their end step too, which is just
It's so good.
the
I
worst.
love that.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Perhaps probably the defining most powerful board wipe in the format still. But what I wanted to say is like, basically for a lot of people, blue board wipes start and end with Cyclonic Rift. They don't really, like, a lot of people when I talk to, they're like, the rest of the blue board wipes are unplayable, or they don't even know that blue has other board wipes, right? And I feel like even a lot of people here right now, what are your opinions? Would you play, like, if you're looking at the list ahead of time, would you realistically play any of these other cards that often? Or you're just like, I go Cyclonic Rift and that's it for my blue board wipes?
I already play a good amount of these cards.
Okay.
So for me, like, I play Cyclonic Rift in every deck, but then there's a bunch of these other cards that I play in specific decks, essentially, depending on my color combination, depending on my theme. Then these other cards show up on occasion. There's nothing else in mono blue that's at the staple level like Cyclonic Rift. Like in white, you have Wrath of God, and then Day of Judgment or whatever. Or in black, you have Damnation and Toxic Deluge. There isn't really a second or third or fourth staple board wipe in blue for me. So we got the one staple and then a bunch of like situational cards.
I'm the person Tomer's talking about. All these cards are unplayable. Like, I agree with Seth. You play Cyclonic Rift, and one situational, like, bounce spell at instant speed that fits your deck, maybe. But then if I'm playing a different color, unless it's actually green, like, any like board wipe from those colors will slot above all of these. And if I'm playing mono blue, then I go down to the colorless board wipes before I start playing these, unless I have like a very specific synergy or something that I'm trying to go for. But in general, I think these are all outclassed, but you might find some combo pieces in here for your deck, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think my goal for this podcast is going to be trying to convince Richard to play more of these non-Cyclonic Rift board wipes, because like as someone who
Over
like
my audio version dead body.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to get you, Richard. By the end of this podcast, I'm going to get you. Yeah.
I also think part of the hard part is, as Richard said, like, if you're a 2 or 3 color deck, then you probably have white mana or you have black mana. And then a lot of the blue board wipes do start to lose a little bit of their luster. So that's something I've noticed.
Certainly.
Like, the multicolor decks bring these cards down a little bit.
So I have a thesis statement here. Well, so first of all, I don't actually run Cyclonic Rift that much, because Cyclonic Rift is a $30 card, and usually I do have a budget restriction. So I've been forced a lot of times in a lot of decks to try and make do with alternatives. So I feel like I've gotten a better appreciation for other alternatives that, you know, people won't even take a glance at because they're just like, Cyclonic Rift is an auto-include, so therefore it's going to go into every deck. But I will make the case. I will make the case for, as a thesis statement, I believe a lot of the cards on our list are going to be very good. They're not going to be as good as Cyclonic Rift, obviously. Like, that is the best blue wipe. It's not even a debate. But there's going to be a lot of these board wipes that turn to be asymmetrical board wipes that are very, very powerful in specific decks. And I think it's a disservice if you are playing those archetypes not to consider these board wipes in your deck alongside perhaps a Cyclonic Rift, or if you're on a budget, maybe just replacing Cyclonic Rift. That is my thesis, and my goal is to change Richard's mind on a few of them. especially one, my favorite of the bunch. We'll get to that soon, though.
That's the only reason for these podcasts, for me to like farm ideas off you guys. I am very open-minded. Teach me of new cards to play.
I mean, that's the whole point of our podcast as well. Like, I know there's a lot of podcasts out there where they don't really debate. They're basically a presentation where it's like 2 or 3 people who are just like, they tell you their agreed upon opinions. And that's great because, you know, if it's a cohesive argument and they're helping each other out, explain that argument. But we're very different. We always debate. We always have different opinions on things. And I think that's a better way of actually learning something about or being introduced to new ideas. Because if everybody has the same opinion on the same cards, then if you did not have that opinion, then maybe that can sway your mind. But if you have 4 different opinions on every single card, you might see different perspectives that might help you more in terms of knowledge and what your own preferences are, which is what I really like about this setup of the podcast. Is like we all come with our different ideas. We don't agree usually. Like Cyclonic Rift we agree on, but this is like a rarity. You'll see coming up. And actually, we'll go to the next one, and we'll see how it actually our opinions differ. Seth, what's the next card on our list?
So next up, we have Curse of the Swine, which is double blue and X sorcery. Exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller makes a 2/2 green boar creature token. In some ways, kind of like a mass sorcery speed Pongify or rapid hybridization almost, where you can do it to a whole bunch of creatures, got the upside of exiling. This one is interesting. Initially, we had it all ranked as C, although as I was thinking about it more, I actually have it as A. I think outside of Cyclonic Rift, I think this is one of the closest blue board wipes to being a staple that you can just run in any deck. My concern initially was I felt like I didn't play it that much, but I actually went back and looked up my old commander decks, and I do play it. I just tend to play it in mono blue decks. Like I said before, if I'm in white or black, then I have other RAS. But in a mono blue deck, I do play this in pretty much all of my decks, and I think it's really powerful. Like exiling is an upside because it gets around indestructibility, and making a bunch of tokens is kind of nice in a blue deck because this synergizes with other RAS where you can turn everything into tokens, and then maybe you cast a mass bounce spell, and then you actually did kind of build your own weird damnation where you dealt with all the creatures permanently. So this is a good like secondary board wipe because it synergizes so well with the mass bounce spell. So I actually like this spell and should probably play it more. But what do you guys think? Y'all got it as C. What do you think about this one?
I'm tempted to put it at D. It's very close. So this is actually the most played non-Cyclonic Rift card according to EDHREC. When we look at this list, this is about 5%. So most people's board wipes end at Curse of Swine. But I would rather play spot removal over it. And you know how I feel about spot removal. So there's a problem that you need to target, right? So if something has boots on it, you can't Curse of Swine it. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is it's super expensive. Like if you want to wipe like 6 creatures, that's 8 mana. Problem number 3 is if you're behind on creatures, these boars will just murder you, right? So to me, it's like more flexible spot removal at sorcery speed, but I'd rather just play the spot removal then if that's what I want to do. So that's why I don't play it. I'm not like there are situations where like maybe you're a sea creature deck, you have big creatures, you swine your opponents, so they have smaller creatures and you attack them, or you're a Voltron or something, but it's very narrow. I think putting in generic deck, I think you're better off just putting another wipe we have on this list, or just even like a Pongify itself.
I pretty much agree with that. I feel like the mana cost on it is just too much. And oftentimes, you'll see this across the board with my ratings. It has this huge problem for me where it I don't know, you have to cast it on your turn.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah, you don't like sorcery?
Like that.
Yeah.
There's a huge thing for me. If this were instant speed, this would be way better. This would be way better. And I think the main reason why this is probably played is because a lot of I think didn't a Precon or something have this? And I know a lot of people like just kind of know of this as like the other sweeper behind it. But when you dig deeper than that, I think a lot of the sweepers are just significantly better than Curse of Swine. Curse of the Swine, exactly. Thank you, Thor. And Curse of Swine is just so mediocre to me, and it's so slow. It's so slow. I just cannot deal with the sorcery speed on this.
Well, for folks listening in and maybe haven't watched us on Commander Clash, Krim is basically our resident draw go player. Like I think it's safe to say, like, Krim, you love decks that basically play at instant speed, right? Like, you're not very much a tap out person.
I do have my tap out decks, and even in a tap out deck, regardless of draw go or tap out, I still think that you're just, even a tempo deck, right? You're losing too much of your turn and the ability to be aggressive by tapping out and having to remove a ton of stuff. So I still would want to do this, even if I were an aggro deck, at the end of your turn.
I gotta argue for this card a little bit, because I think y'all are overlooking something here, which is we got a huge list of these blue board wipes. We have 20 some cards that we found that count as blue board wipes. This is, I believe, the single card on this entire list. There might be one pseudo exception that we'll get to later that Tomer loves, but this is the only card on the list that actually deals with a creature permanently. Like, sure, you can Cyclonic Rift, sure, you can Evacuation or Flood of Tears, like, name all this list. You're just bouncing it, and your opponent's going to replay it, and you're going to be staring down that same horrible threat that was about to kill you a turn or two later. This is unique in the world of blue board wipes because it's the only one that actually kills a creature dead. So I think that's got to count for something. Like, that's got to be something. Like, how much is your mono blue
That's
deck
why it's
gonna
a C.
That's why it's a C,
deal with
it's not a
something?
D.
That's why it's a C.
I mean,
Because
Seth's point is
Rich,
correct,
the
though. It's
boards,
also versatile. A lot of the wipes we have here have some condition on them. So you could slam this into any deck and have it be a mediocre card, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's never going to be awful. But like when I'm looking at a board wipe, my major criteria that I look for is how easy you can break the symmetry on it, which Curse of Swine does very well. But also the other thing that I'm very much keen on is how mana efficient can you be on it. And Curses of Swine marks very high in terms of breaking symmetry because it's never going to target your own stuff. It does permanently deal with a threat instead of just bouncing it like 99% of the stuff here. But I think it's just so mana inefficient these days that I just generally don't really run it that often. And I do, like Richard said, I do generally just run like spot removal. Like I'd rather run these days like a reality shift and spend 2 mana to get rid of one creature at instant speed over this. I feel like when this came out, I was running it almost always. But as we got more and more other like narrow options that are very good in specific archetypes, I just stopped running it that much. Yeah.
I mean, another thing here is if I'm using targeted removal and it's going to be heavier on the mana, I'd rather than just with the effects of blue, the bounce is just better because if I'm going to do anything like that's going to target, it's probably going to steal it. Because blue has lots of like things that are roughly around the same amount of mana that can just steal it and or just like reality shift mentioned or pongify. So spot removal is just better.
Crim's evil.
Yes, that too.
Stealing everybody's creatures.
I'd rather just yoink it.
Fair. All right, we'll move on to another card that was like basically an old school staple. Krim, what is this?
All right, so Evacuation. Now this card is a 3 blue instant speed, and what it does is return all creatures to owner's hands. And as I had mentioned earlier, I do love this card because it's instant. The ability to go off whenever I want it to, whether I'm an aggro deck or a control deck or, whatever, even better when my Super Friends deck. It's because you can do it at your, like, you don't have to spend your turn to do it, and it bounces all the stuff, and instant is exactly what blue is about. This is like why I love blue. Everything is on your opponent's turn. So, I think that's big. That's big enough for me to just love it. And it bounces all of it, including your own, which may seem bad, but sometimes you can just replay your own stuff, and that's just good enough too. I have this as an A, by the way.
Yeah, so Krim and Seth both have it as an A, and me and Richard both have it as a B. So, Seth, what do you think about it?
I think it's the best at what it does. Like, if you just want to make everyone pick up all their creatures, I think this is it's the oldest version. It's been around since Stronghold, but it's still the best version. Use 5 mana at instant speed. It's a nice reset. So I like it for a lot of the same reasons Krim said. Being instant speed is really nice. You can wait until the most beneficial time, almost like you can with Cyclonic Rift, where you wait until before your turn and then you get to rebuild first. So yeah, I think this is also one of the closest to being a staple level card. I play it in a lot of mono blue decks just because you don't have a lot of other options really that are strong.
Yeah, I agree with Seth. This is my highest rated non-Cyclonic Rift card at B. This is the
All
closest
C's
to
and
a
D's from here.
staple. It's 5 mana bounce everything, so instant speed is the key thing, right? You can use it as pseudo spot removal. Like, you don't need to fire it off, unless you have to, right? Unless someone's attacking you or something, you can just keep it in hand. So that is very good. The downside is it just bounces everything, right? Like, everyone just redeploys it. So, I play it in mono blue decks when I really want this effect. Otherwise, I'd go to basically any other card. So I think it's good enough, but it's pretty narrow. So B.
Bounce, I think feel like is undervalued here. I think the ability to tempo out somebody out to make them replay it again is huge.
But what if they have ETB triggers?
Well, that's fine, but they got to do it on their turn.
Let me Muldrift again, Krim, please.
I mean, yes, if you need to Muldrift again, I will take that L. But I think bouncing something is a huge thing because it gets around indestructible, which almost everything comes with indestructible now or some way to survive a lot of stuff. But unless they're phasing out, it's going back to their hand, and that's sometime all you need.
This also personally deals with tokens. If anybody's on the token strategy, it resets them pretty well.
Yeah?
I don't know. Me personally, I like the card. I really like it in blink decks. When we're talking about what if we reset an opponent's ETB, I feel like the decks that benefit the most from this, honestly, are decks that are blink heavy. So basically, it's a way to protect your own board from a board wipe, and then redeploy your ETB creatures and get extra value out of that. But also, you can use it to mess up your opponent's turns at instant speed. I'll run it in those decks, but there's so many bounce spells now these days, mass bounce spells, that I find if I'm in a specific archetype, I'm probably not gonna run. I'm gonna run a different blue one. So I like it in blink decks, but I usually don't really run it outside of blink decks. So that's why I put it as a B. All right, fine. That's it. I'm not going to be contested there.
I agree with
All right,
you,
we'll
Tomer.
move on.
Double B,
We'll move on.
double A's. They're pretty close.
Double B, double A's. All right, okay. So we'll move on to another one that is a fun one. This is Flood of Tears. This is a 6 mana blue sorcery. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. If you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So we all put it at... I put it at B, and Seth put it at B. Krim and Richard put them at C. All right, here's my pitch for this one. Again, B means it's good in very specific decks, not all decks, and I stand by that assessment right now, at least, before people tell me otherwise. I like this in big mana cost decks. I used to run this in my Joda Archmage Eternal deck, where all my big creatures, or I ran Omniscience in that deck, for example. I had big high cost permanents in that deck. So if I wanted to wipe the board, I could actually use this as a mana accelerant. Imagine you wipe the board with Flood of Tears, and then you immediately use Flood of Tears to drop down an Omniscience. So you're basically ramping out an Omniscience, and then you can redeploy your entire hand. I think that's Christmas Land. That's the best case scenario. But if you just put it in a Joda deck and you're not ramping out that, you just ramp out a Jin-Gitaxias or whatever big haymaker you got. I think it's really, really good there. I also saw it played a lot in mono blue braids, where every single person's upkeep, they get to cheat sneak attack. I forget the term. Show and tell. They get to show and tell a big permanent to play. So if you're in a blue deck that is really high-end curve stuff, also the Polymorphous deck, I think it's Jalira Polymorphous or something like that. Anything that's has really high cost permanents that are going to have just sitting in your hand, Flood of Tears is a really fantastic way to not only reset the board, but also get you ahead on the board immediately afterwards. So that's why I put it as a B. It's really good in those decks, but I wouldn't run it anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm the other B, and the first thing I went to is Omniscience. Like, you're playing Commander, everyone's got a ton of mana rocks, so it's not that hard to have 4 non-token permanents. So you kind of incidentally are going to do that in most of your decks, and then being able to immediately put Omniscience or something else really massive into play is actually really strong. Outside of Omniscience, other place I remember playing it is in my Garuda deck that I built right after Garuda came out. You get all these big stuff you're trying to cheat into play. You can pick up Garuda, put it back into play, get another Garuda trigger. So there, in most decks you wouldn't want this, and you want something more efficient. But in those specific decks, I actually think this is like one of the best wraths you can play, because it's kind of a combo piece that also resets the board.
I mean,
people.
I'm sorry, I'm not spending 6 mana to do anything on my turn. If I'm doing that, I'm killing you. Like, it's simply, like, or I'm putting a threat on board. And then I know that this can get something on board and potentially bounce something, but it's 6 mana. It just feels like the tag sorcery in mono blue. That's when I start going, okay, if I'm in a mono blue deck, maybe, but even then, there's like 6 other sweepers I would play before this. Some of them do the same thing, but even cheaper with the reduction, without, like, you know, maybe putting something into play, and I can live with that. But otherwise, then we start getting into multicolor decks, and I will never play this in a multicolor deck unless I, like, really, really, for some odd reason, am just memeing. Otherwise, yeah, like, I cannot justify the 6 mana on my turn.
6 mana Omniscience, Crim.
I agree with Tomer. Like, if you're playing Omniscience, this is the nuts. But that's so narrow that I can't count that.
Is that a B,
like,
though? Would you call that a
no,
B? Very good.
For that
so
one
narrow
situation
that
is
small percent, small percentage.
that's
of
like saying
decks,
Zoff
Richard?
consumption is B tier because you can play, you know, like, no, right? Obviously,
What?
you can always play these
What?
D cards anywhere, but
You're comparing it to Zoff consumption?
so you need to bounce 4 things, right? If you're playing like a super big deck, you're
couple
bouncing your
mana
mana
rocks.
rocks, which you do not want to be doing, right? Like, so unless it's literally Omniscience and you're protecting and winning right there, like, you just bounced all your ramp, and now you're back in the Stone Ages because your hand is all 8 drops, right? If they get rid of your 1 threat. So that's why I don't think generically you like this. And, you know, 6 mana for a board wipe is just way too much, right? So you're using it as like a pseudo combo piece. So with Omniscience, yeah, perfect. This card, you obviously just throw this in, right? If you're playing off Omniscience in your deck. But to me, that's super narrow. Like, you don't generically put it in. Like, I don't want to bounce all my mana rocks and set myself back. You know, that's like a dark ritual or something, right? Now you're behind. And if you needed to bounce everything, you're probably behind already, right? So you just set yourself back some mana rocks too. So it's pretty for me.
Fine. I think I'm gonna get you on the next one though. Richard, what's the next card on here?
Our next card is Whelming Wave. 4 mana sorcery. Return all creatures to their owner's hand except krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents.
You don't like? Oh, so all of us put it as a B except for Richard.
Yep.
Who's sticking to his guns?
See,
Just C's and D's for days.
I'd rather pay
This
one more
I'm gonna
mana
get
and have
ya.
instant speed.
This one I'm gonna get you.
Hey.
Right? I'd rather
Even-
pay one more
wait.
mana, get instant speed, and get all the
Oh.
krakens and whatever
No,
nonsense you
No,
miss.
here.
No, you're-
can I,
so you're
I
playing
want
this-
to pitch. Go Seth first.
You're playing this in a deck with those tribes as a tribal
Yeah.
card. Why would you not play it as a one-sided wrath with your krakens and your leviathans and your, like, you bounce all your opponent's stuff, you keep all your huge sea
agree.
creatures and one-shot people? Oh my god,
Are we
how is
calling
this
that
not the
B?
definition of
literally-
good?
it's
It's
one of the
literally
best
one
cards.
deck it goes in.
Isn't
It's
that
one of the best
definition
cards
of
in that
B?
deck,
deck.
Richard.
It
What?
is-
Read
it-
me
it
again.
is-
Go
it
into
is
the small
the best
percentage
card
of
in
the
that
deck.
deck.
Sea monsters.
That percentage is too small. Think of all the
But it's not
multicolor
what?
decks you can't play it in. Of all mono
What?
blue decks,
Bruno,
think of all
the
of those you can't play it in.
Arixmithes?
And the one time you play sea creatures, yes, you slam this in your deck, right?
But you're like, okay. So if
Right.
we had a staple card that was a staple in all dragon decks, you'd be like, oh, dragon decks. You
Yeah,
know,
it wouldn't
how
be
many
good.
people play dragon decks?
So let me name you like Zoff consumption. What is like the rogue that's an MDFC or a cleric that's MDFC? Right?
Nobody
Those
will
are
run
good
Zoff
cards
consumption.
in those decks.
Where's
but
Zoff consumption a staple? Where's Zoff consumption like an all-star?
And
One of
any
the
life
best
gain
cards
deck.
in an archetype.
any life gain deck,
no,
right?
I'm not spending like 6 mana for that trash. Come on now.
No, this is too
That's
narrow. This is one specific
trash
deck.
tier.
All magic cards have a purpose in
Okay.
some deck out there.
all right, Richard. All right, how about this? You've convinced me. I'm back down to a C.
No! It's literally one of the best cards of the tribe. Like, sea monsters is inherently, they're slow. They're inherently slow. You want asymmetrical board resets to let you catch up. Like, this is one of the best things you can do. You have, like, one or two sea monsters. Your opponents have more stuff. You bounce all of it for 4 mana. Your stuff is left alone, and then you can smash them for lethal.
What about every other non-sea monster deck, though? This is not a good card, right?
But it's staple there to be.
Okay,
so we're just changing how we weight the meta percentage of sea monsters.
Yeah, Richard might be winning me over too. Like I do think this is the best.
Stormkirk,
I do think this is the best card in a sea creature deck. It literally is like the best card. But it isn't the most popular tribe. So if the argument is sea creatures aren't popular enough to qualify as B tier altogether, I can see that. Like, that might actually be correct. Because it definitely is, like, a pretty low-tier janky tribe.
We can get mediocre filler cards? What are...
In a generic deck, it's a mediocre filler card, right?
We need to stop the recording and start with a new rating scale, then. It's good in a small percentage of decks.
All right.
No.
I'm sticking with you, Tomer. I'm sticking with you. It's a very small percentage of decks. It's a very small percentage of decks, but it is
percentage of decks.
Really good in those decks.
Everybody loves sea monsters. In tribal, by the way, very good in tribal too. So that's 2.
I think you're skewed by tribal. That's.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on for my blood pressure's sake. All right.
Next up, oh boy, I'm looking forward to this one. Next up, we have Devastation Tide, 5 mana sorcery, bounce all non-land permanents, miracle it for 1 and a blue. We have D's across the board. Richard D, Seth D, Krim D, Tomer. Hanging out in the B tier. Tomer, sell us on Devastation Tide.
Tomer, do you have anything not on a B?
I have a couple C's. All right.
Tomer plays 86 board wipes in every blue deck.
No, because
I'm
using the scale as we're supposed to, Richard.
What deck do you like
I put it in very specific decks.
So what is the specific deck for Devastation Tide?
It's very good in 2 styles of deck. And the one I think Cream will really appreciate. Actually, 2 Cream will really appreciate. Devastation Tide is one of my favorite inclusions in a top deck manipulation deck, such as Amanatu, which is a really fun commander that's all about like essentially brainstorming. So when you can control when you want to miracle out, like if you can consistently cast Devastation Tide for its miracle cost, it's a 2 mana full board wipe. It doesn't just hit creatures, it hits all non-land permanents. So it's a full board wipe for 2 mana, which is, I think, objectively a very good rate. If we can consistently cast that in a deck for 2 mana, then I don't think people would be so opposed to the idea of it being labeled a good card in that deck. The second deck...
If I'm playing... So I have an Amanatu deck.
Yes.
I took this card out. Because this is of the miracle cards, this is not the one I want to be playing, right? Like, it's just not good enough. And if I'm in Amanatu, I'm in 3 colors, specifically Esper. My issue is not dealing with permanents. If anything, it's a drawback oftentimes that I had this.
Tomer's slinking out of sight.
Krim has an Amanatu deck. Like, you have other colors. Like, why would you be playing this bounce spell?
I appreciate the miracling, all right? That's great with Amanatu, but Tomer, this card is...
No!
Okay.
All right.
Courtesy of Valorant, I've learned new ways to describe things. Dog water?
No. Okay. Other one. Crib, you got it. Hear me out. Draw go. All right. You're running Nimris. Okay. You're running Nimris. You're drawing a little card every single turn, you know, or your Jorien or whatever, where it's like whenever you cast your second spell, you draw a card. Imagine you are miracling this on somebody else's turn. Instant speed, 2 mana board reset. You love instant speed, and you love mana efficiency. Drago.
Okay. In
Drago.
Nimris, specifically in like a Nimris deck, that would be pretty fun. The issue is Nimris, it's not like an Amanatu deck where I can consistently manipulate the top of my deck. So I can
Mystical Tutor.
Oh, I don't
Mystical
play tutors.
Tutor.
You're playing black. There's no way you're playing this card.
What?
You could jump through the hoops, or you could just slam a Toxic Deluge and call it a game, right?
if you're black, you're even better because you could like Vamp Tutor it. You can Vamp Tutor a Devastation Tide on top of your library, Miracle it for 2 mana, replay your entire hand. You know,
Look at this.
or
What
whatever.
if I Dark
Black,
Ritual
in blue and
Damnation? That's 2 cards, 2 mana board
But that's
wipe.
4 mana.
That's the same as
It
your
doesn't deal with
Devastation.
artifacts. It doesn't deal with enchantments. It doesn't deal with planeswalkers.
Which,
There's
by
other
the
things
way,
than just creatures.
those are relevant, right? Like example, how
Yes.
does Dimir deal with an oubliette, right?
Yes,
It's
here's-
very.
Crim,
I will-
Crim,
I will
join
give-
me.
I will give you that on Nimrus, and like, but other than that, like, I'm still not playing it.
I
Though,
don't
Over
want
D.
my board
Just
wipe
give
to
me
be a
over D,
combo,
Crim.
right? I don't
Just
want
give
to
me
have
over
to
D.
assemble some combo to board wipe, right? Like
I'll even take a
that is
C.
not
I'll
good,
take a
right?
C.
Like the miracle's useless, right? I don't want to just randomly board wipe when I draw this card
Yeah.
either, right? I want to control when I board wipe, so
But
this
there's
is all
nothing control if you have
downside.
top manipulation.
Even in the decks you listed, Tomer, I can't agree.
No.
Like, that is the main thing. The fact that it is randomly 2 mana. Like I don't know if I can get.
Or
down
you need
with
to be in a
that.
good enough
value.
spot that you can manipulate your miracle cards to board wipe, right? Like if you're already that ahead, like do you really need to board wipe, right? So
What do you mean? You mystical tutor and then you just board wipe for 2 mana.
And
like
I
a
mean,
mystical
it's-
tutor blasphemous act. Like a mystical tutor.
But then you don't get rid of the artifacts
I
or
just spent
enchantments
a
of the
card.
planeswalkers.
isn't
Just
it pretty
spent a
bad if
card
you're
to get
not
this board wipe?
miracling it? It's pretty bad though, right? At 5 mana, aren't there like a lot of better options?
Yeah, that's why I put it as a B because it's really good in decks that can miracle it consistently.
And if a certain exact board state happens, that's
No,
like
not an
further.
exact board. What do you mean exact board state? It's the most flexible of them. You have an exact board state is you're threatened by just creatures. This is less of an exact board state because you actually, if you're threatened by artifacts or enchantments, this actually bounces it.
So
I disagree.
plus, you don't always want to bounce all your non-creatures. That's the other thing. Like I run into that with some white rats that destroy all non-land permanents, like a hour of whatever the white one is. Those names are so weird, but like I don't play that very much because I don't want to bounce all or blow up all of my artifacts and enchantments. So that can be a
Well,
drawback
maybe you
too.
shouldn't run any creature board wipes in a creature deck because sometimes you don't want to blow up all your creatures. I don't know, Seth. Maybe we just shouldn't run board wipes at all. I don't know. All right,
I
moving
don't
on.
mind blowing up my own stuff, but I just think that
You
this
never have
card-
creatures.
This
I mean,
was too much of a
but-
reach for me. I can't agree. I can't
We're
even
moving
strive to
on.
a C. That seems wrong.
Where are we going? Whose turn is it?
It would okay. Was that you?
I just went.
I think it's
No,
to
no,
you.
okay.
Or I read that one. I read that
Okay,
one.
this is
right?
Crim.
Okay
Please.
then. Perfect. So then that means that up next we have Devastation Tide. Or no, sorry. Consuming Tide. The other Tide. The better one. Okay. So Consuming Tide is actually new. It's 2 blue, and it just came from Crimson Vow. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you. This card, I think, is severely underrated. And it's a very, very powerful card that is bouncing, leaving everybody, yes, with their best permanent, but oftentimes I can probably work that to my advantage, right? Because it's only one single thing on the board that's left, and on top of that, bouncing an enchantment, an artifact, or a bunch of things that Dimir does struggle with is big, and then on top of that, drawing me cards, I love that. So I just think and it's also fairly costed. It is 4 mana. Oftentimes, I am using this, and I am always happy. I have been very happy every time I played it. Even when we filmed, like, a Commander Clash where, y'all had a bunch of ETBs, I didn't mind it. Whatever, you can ETB it again. But you have to play it all again and leave it. And it was an all-around great, well-costed card.
So you gave it a B, and the rest of us gave it a C. I just want to throw it out there.
I'm skeptical of rats that leave behind everyone's best thing. I will say, be they blue or white or whatever color. Like, I haven't got a chance to play with this much because it's new. I don't think I've actually cast it once. My worry is you cast this at sorcery speed, you leave everyone's best thing, and they all just smack you to death with it. Like, sometimes you need to reset the board to stay alive, and I feel like this isn't necessarily going to get the job done every time. Although I do like that it can potentially draw you cards, which is a nice little bonus, but I'm skeptical of leaving a thing behind and letting your opponent choose the thing.
replaces itself
It's
potentially
sorcery
times
speed,
3.
though.
You better hope you draw into like a Pongify to get rid
A
of
real
the thing you
wrath.
actually want to get rid of. Like,
But like we don't want to bounce all of our stuff, right? And sometimes I only need one thing to stay. This feels like exactly that sweeper, right? I am resetting the board and I only need to deal with one thing, right, from everybody's board. And or usually if I'm casting this, that means that y'all have gone too far ahead in the game. And nobody will even be that mad anyways. I left you your best thing.
so I almost thought this was a good card. Like I was like, okay, it's like blue single combat, but like why would you ever play single combat? Like you only play it in Voltron decks. But this
Single
bounces
combat
on
didn't
my
draw you
equipment.
cards.
This bounces on
combat
my
doesn't draw you
equipment. So like this
cards.
doesn't do anything for me, right? So I think your board wipes need to actually wipe the board. And yes, it's good that you draw cards, but you're probably digging for another board wipe to finish the job because you didn't do it correctly, right? So
No, I don't.
See-
I don't need a full sweep. Okay,
But it's also sorcery speed. Why do you like it if it's sorcery speed?
it's 4 mana, it bounces everything, and it draws me cards.
But it
Pretty
doesn't
much
bounce
everything.
everything.
It pretty much bounces everything and leaves only one thing behind.
except the
that is
best
actually
thing that they don't want bounced.
If you got to choose what they got to keep, I would be like,
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
that'd be nuts.
100% really good. But like,
Yeah.
if they get to choose, and yeah, like what deck wants this? Probably Voltron, and like Richard said, you're losing your Voltron pieces.
I don't play it in creature decks unless it's like a tempo deck or a flash deck, but I love it in my control decks because then I can usually leave my lock piece on board.
So you wouldn't. So in a control deck, you wouldn't rather have a hard reset, like whatever Devastation Tide or something that got everything. You'd rather like if you had to choose.
Yeah, because I get to draw cards. I get to replace itself, right? As opposed to Devastation Tide, where I have to spend all that mana and then not get anything back, randomly sweep for 2 mana. And if it were consistently 2, I'd love that. But the fact that, let's just assume that I'm not miracling Devastation Tide. That's 5 mana, doesn't replace itself. And once again, I like that I get to leave my own thing. Let's say a Planeswalker. Or like an ensnaring bridge or something like that. So that means great.
If you had like
Now
a
you all have
maze
to
of
deal with
it, a propaganda ensnaring bridge or something, I could see why you would cast this. But
It's good in specific decks, and it draws you cards. It's great.
we've
And it's
seen,
only
so actually yeah, we can't
4
spoil
mana
it.
consistently.
We've
4
seen
mana.
Krim cast this. I'm going to say the results were not too impressive.
What? What?
Do you remember? I don't want, because this will go up before Commander Clash.
Yeah,
goes
this
up.
goes
I don't want to
out
spoil it,
okay.
but I was
Couple
not
days
impressed
beforehand.
when you cast this.
I was very impressed, especially with what I drew. I think you weren't impressed because I was the tribe I was playing. Okay.
Because you left some very tasty things on the battlefield.
Yeah,
still.
I was gonna say I was impressed because I got to keep my consecrated sphinx or whatever it was. So like I was cool with it.
Sad spoilers.
Oh, just kidding.
All right, we're dodging
Just
spoilers by
kidding.
moving to the next card. Next card, we got Engulf the Shore. This is a 4 mana blue instant that says return to their owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. And that took me a while to actually read that properly. So this card, essentially, instant speed is really nice. It's essentially
again.
like if you
Say it
compare it to Evacuation. Evacuation is 5 mana, return all creatures, no strings attached. This is 4 mana instant, return all creatures, toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. So there is a stipulation, there's a restriction. However, that restriction is probably going to be met pretty easily in like a mono blue deck or like a 2-color deck that like runs basically almost all blue. I like it, but I only like it in specific decks. Like, I think it gets a lot worse outside of mono blue. Like, some 2-color decks that are super blue heavy can still run it. But the restriction is pretty real. It doesn't always bounce everything, I've found to my dismay. But I do like it in 2 specific decks. Sea Monsters, which definitely is a B worthy just by itself, and I stand by that. Because, you know, 7/7s or whatever, probably not going to be bounced by the Engulf the Shore. Usually you're going to be picking off the smaller creatures with it, especially if you're like a Simic or a Dimir version of Sea Monsters as well, where you can actually use the fact that you're not bouncing everything to your advantage. I also like it in Blink decks. Again, this is a way to reset the board, is in a mono, like a blue heavy one, like Thassa, for example. I think it's Thassa Deep Dwelling. I think this is a fantastic card for that deck as well, because you're a blink deck. You want to have ways to reset the board at instant speed, maybe protect your board from a board wipe, or if you're being attacked for a whole bunch of damage, you can stop that very quickly, and then you can redeploy, get all those enter the battlefield triggers again with your creatures. So I think it's good in those two archetypes a lot, but you have to be mono blue heavy, and blah, 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 blah. We had the ratings at B's across the board. We actually agreed with everything. What? Richard, did you switch
You
it?
had an A. Did you ninja downshift it? Oh no, Crim downshifted.
I shifted. I downshifted because
Richard,
if
did
we
you
were-
change it?
No, it would have been me. All
Okay.
y'all were B. I had an A, but the thing here is, okay, I love it because it's instant speed. But
Yes.
if we're saying that it's obviously we're looking at these board wipes in a broader scope, so not just in a mono blue deck. I cannot justify this in any deck that is not mono blue.
Yeah.
So that's why I bumped it down to a B, because it is very good in a mono blue deck. Doesn't matter what deck it is, I will always play it in a mono blue deck. My clone deck, it's amazing because then I'm able to bounce all my clones back, clone other things. So this is a staple in a mono blue deck, and it's instant speed once again. Oh God, I love that word instant. Outside of that, it's terrible.
This is a strong B. We've had some debate over, like, is this a C? Is this a B? Does C creatures count? Do they see enough play to count as a B? The B here is you're playing a lot of islands. So essentially, like Grim said, any mono blue deck, I think this is like pretty close to Evacuation level. Maybe better than Evacuation if you're playing mono blue with a bunch of islands. But that's the pinch. Once you get to 2 colors, this is kind of just unplayable.
Yeah, so this is my top 2 non-Cyclonic Rift cards, Evacuation and Golf, but I think the stock of this card is actually going down over time. I am playing less and less islands every day with MDFCs, with Lost Veils, with Vesuvas, Thespian Stages, with what do I Field of the Dead, right? Like, you're just playing less and less islands now, right? There's like no reason to play islands anymore. So I think Evacuation is better, but this is solid. This is, I think, one of the ones you should go for.
You can tell Richard hasn't played against enough back to basics decks.
We
play back to basics.
Normalize back to basics. All right, that's my opinion on if you.
I fully agree.
There's too many utility. Urza Saga. There's too many utility colorless lands you need to be playing nowadays, right? So the stock is going down, but this used to be one of the best ones, and I think it's still pretty good. So I do agree with the B.
I still stand by that it's good in 2 color sea monsters. Because, like, then yeah, you're not bouncing everything, but if you bounce power, like, toughness 4 or less, you know, like, that's good, because then your sea monsters stick around, and then you break the symmetry that way.
I feel like it's just so inconsistent.
It's like a win more now, right? Like, that's a finisher as opposed to a board wipe. If you're behind, this thing does nothing, right? Like, you can't bounce anything, and you're dying, right?
But if your sea monsters, you're de facto behind. You have to use board resets to catch up.
But you don't have enough items to wipe the board because you're playing 2 color sea monsters.
Well, what is the second color? If it's black, then you just have Damnation, Toxic Deluge.
Plus, you have Whelming Wave. B tier Whelming Wave for your sea creatures.
Well, you run both.
Whelming Wave would be like S tier in the C tier.
If I go sea monsters, I'm running at least 4 board resets, at least, because the tribe is so slow.
Like 7.
But if you're 2 colors,
I'm not even kidding.
But you're gonna die. You have nothing to attack me.
So
with.
if you're behind and you do one of these bouncing board wipes, you'll still be behind when everyone deploys their board, right? You don't.
No, because I have my Kraken still. The whole thing is my Krakens are sticking around. I want asymmetrical board wipes with my Kraken deck, with my sea monster deck. So yeah, that's why I like it.
Toma really likes sea monsters.
I've never seen him play a sea
I feel like the honor of Sea Monster Tribal. Everybody who loves Sea Monster Tribal,
This is a sea
I need to
monster
stand up for them.
list.
All
How
of our
well does this card
viewers,
do with Sea Monster Tribal.
Sea Monster stands unite. We have to take down the tyrannical Richard.
Okay, how about this? I believe you, but I just don't see enough sea monsters.
There's dozens of us. There's dozens. All right, we'll move on, I guess. The next one is Richard, take it away.
All right, Crush the Tentacles, 6 mana, and it has a surge cost of 5. Return all non-land permanents to the owner's hand if it was surged. Make an 8/8 blue octopus creature token. I have it as a C. You all have it as a B. good luck surging this. It's like, you need to surge it, which sounds simple, but like you got to hold like that ponder this whole game to ponder Crush of Tentacles, right? And for the upside of making an 8/8, I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather just play, normal card, because this is at least a 6 mana bounce, right? Like if you can surge one, and if you can't surge one, it's way more. So I'd rather just play lower CMC wipes than muck around to try to get an octopus. But it is really good in Sea Monster Tribal, Tomer.
Exactly.
It makes an octopus.
Exactly.
That was actually why I have it as a B, because it's an octopus. If you're playing Octopus Tribal, boom. Creature synergies.
I do think this leaving a body behind is pretty relevant.
Break symmetry.
Like
But
the
you
big
gotta
body
play-
that it leaves behind.
So if your surge card is like a creature, then this is like nonsense. You gotta like play the creature, then surge the Crush of Tentacles and bounce your own creature, right? So the surge, the card you're triggering surge with needs to be an instant or sorcery for you not to go backwards.
Or have an enter the battlefield effect.
Yeah, ETB.
Yeah,
Because
Muldrifter.
Blue is really good at.
I would play this in a multicolored deck that has an ETB style effect. So, and this is like the primetime card for that kind of deck too. So I do think that Crush of Tentacles has a place in a good small corner of the market, not just sea monsters. Not that they're bad. All right, we've established that yes, all the mono blue is killer in sea monster
Maybe
world.
bring out the Advocates. All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm looking
In
for
sea
it.
All sea
world,
monster decks use the
everything.
Advocates.
I will venture one more deck that it's good, not just sea monsters, which is to help defend the B, because apparently sea monsters isn't good enough for a B these days. Brutaclad Telcor Engineer, which is a pretty popular commander. It's focused on tokens.
Bounce your own.
You bounce everything, and then like you play Brutaclad later on, assuming you still have your 8/8 big old token. And since it's a token, you can turn your other tokens into 8/8 into a copy of it with Brutaclad. That's what Brutaclad loves. Brutaclad loves big tokens that you can turn your other tokens into. 8/8 is one of the biggest tokens you can get. I don't know if there's like a populate deck in blue. I think they're usually like Selesnya or Naya. But if you have ways of populating an 8/8 token, that's like one of the best tokens you can populate. So I like in both of those as well. But Sea Monster, Crush of you gotta put it in
Flavor
Sea
wise,
Monsters.
it's there. Yeah, like I mean, like if you're not playing this in a Sea Monsters deck, you're failing the flavor.
It's an S. It's an S in Sea Monsters.
It's S
It
in
makes
Sea
it-
Monsters,
It averages
yes.
out to B. B for bananas. I don't know. Next.
Next up, we have Coastal Breach, 7 mana, sorcery, returns all non-land permanents to their owner's hands, and it has Undaunted, so it costs 1 less to cast for each opponent. So if you have 3 opponents rather than 7, it's going to be down to 4. As far as rankings, we got C's across the board, except for me. I got it at a D. I don't know why you'd ever play this card. If we're going to rank Devastation Tide as a D, this has to be a D. Like, isn't this just like way worse than it's still sorcery speed? You maybe get a 1 mana discount, except Devastation Tide, you can potentially get a 3 mana discount thanks to Miracle. I don't get it. I don't understand why this would be anything but a D, but why are we seeing with this card?
I'm very close to a D with you, and it wouldn't take me that much of a nudging to get to a D, but the only reason why I have it as a C is because the illusion of the fun that it can have. It's like, because look, there's more people at the table. This can cost less.
I guess if you're playing
Cyclonic
8-player
Rift,
commander
you
or
guys.
something, it's insane.
Yeah.
If you're one of those weird play
well,
groups.
Free, okay.
Yeah.
Like, well, it would never be free. It'd at least be 1. But yeah, like, okay, this is like very, very much so a D. But the fact that it has the random mana reduction and it could cost 4 as opposed to on average being 5, like it has a higher average of costing 4 than like, Devastation Tide probably costing 2. But other
I'm
than that-
close to putting this to a B actually somehow while you guys are skewing down. So this is 4 mana unconditional bounce everything. Right? Which actually
That's
the
sorcery.
rate, that's like the best rate you can get, right? At sorcery in blue. The effect is kind of meh, but it's unconditional, right? So if we're saying something like
doesn't draw cards.
it doesn't draw cards, it's not instant speed,
Doesn't draw
but it
cards.
is the most
Doesn't let you
efficient
cheat
at
out an
sorcery speed.
omniscience. It's not asymmetrical. This is the one that you think are gonna pump up.
Isn't
Richard?
Devastation
It's
Tide
close.
just better though? Wouldn't
No, because
Devastation
you
Tide just
can't miracle when
Tide
you
is
want,
better.
right?
You
It's
guys
like just
were
randomly miracling, right?
You guys were too.
Consuming Tide is better. Consuming Tide is so much better.
You can also
consistently
miracle it. You
4.
can miracle Devastation Tide at instant speed.
But it's
You
the
don't
best thing
draw
that does
cards.
this, right? 4 mana sorcery,
It's
unconditional.
like this is
Yeah,
like the.
I mean,
is
this
that
like
enough
the-
to make it? Like, how can we
I-
say?
you know what else is 4 mana and
This is like-
unconditional? Consuming Tide.
I feel
Unconditional
like,
always
blandest,
4 mana.
least
Like,
interesting board wipe on the
Okay, you
entire
can't
list.
convince
This
me
is
of
like
Consuming Tide.
this is like the vanilla
You
of
draw
ice cream
cards.
flavors. This is like if you go to a burrito place and you say, "I just want beans." Hold
But
the everything.
That's what you want,
That's
though, right?
what
When you
you're
want a
asking
board wipe,
for.
you need it to be as efficient as possible and to do what
Where's
you want it
the
to do.
spice?
You don't want it to be like drawing cards and being your win con because you won't be able to snap it off when you need to, right?
Where's the spice?
But
I
it's still
feel-
just a bounce, though.
it's still just a bounce. And Devastation Tide is 1 more mana. I feel like the upside of being able to miracle it makes up for the 1 more mana on the front side. And we're also treating this as if you have 3 opponents. Like once someone's
Yeah.
dead, then it is literally Devastation Tide without miracle. And then with 2 players dead, it's really expensive.
All
So
right, you've convinced me. It's C. Okay. I was gonna try to be positive and get some more playable board wipes here, but
I'm gonna get you on the
unplayable.
overwhelming wave. I'm still working on that one.
Unplayable.
I actually
Consuming
run
Tide
it in a
is better.
single deck. Only run it in a single deck. Otherwise, it's absolute. I've never run it otherwise. There's one enchantment that I think Crim really likes or would really like. It's called Warp Devotion, and I did a budget deck tech on it.
Devotion.
Yeah, it's a 3 mana black enchantment that says whenever a permanent is returned to a player's hand, that player discards a card. So you put that on the battlefield, and suddenly your bounce spells, they get really tasty.
That they
you
do.
You Coastal Piracy it. They put all their stuff back into the hand, they have to discard that much, and it's like, yum, yum, yum,
And
yum.
and you forgot to mention the most important part. It's white bordered.
Oh, you could get a white border, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. I'll put it in there. I don't know. I like it. Oh, we have the next one is my favorite card of the bunch. Who's saying it?
I've
Can
been
I-
waiting for this. I think
Yeah.
it's Richard. No, Krim.
Richard, go
I
for
just
it.
went.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, it's
We can let
me.
Tomer describe his favorite card.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Go
you,
ahead,
you can
Toby.
go ahead and
Okay,
take this one. I'll take the
okay,
one
okay.
after, anyways.
Okay. So my favorite card of the list that I've been talking about and hyping up for who knows how long. I think like 2 years at least at this point. This is one of my favorite budget board wipes on the entire list, and it's something that I keep jamming and I keep gotchaing people with it all the time, and yet it still doesn't get any respect. No respect. This is Fade Away. This is a 3 mana blue sorcery. For each creature, that creature's controller pays 1 or sacrifices a permanent. So imagine this, if you will. So first, the rating, I put it as an A, as it deserves. Crib and Richard, D, and Seth is a B.
deserves.
D. I mean, here's my pitch. All right. So picture this, if you will. Your opponents have a lot of creatures on the battlefield. You do not have many creatures. Maybe you have 1, maybe you have 0, maybe you have like 2, whatever. You pay 3 mana. And then suddenly, if they have like, I don't know, a board state of a lot of creatures, could be 6, could be 10, could be even more if they're a token deck. For each one of those, they got to pay 1 or they got to sacrifice something. Now, I've casted this a lot. You all on Commander Clash have seen this casted a lot. And I would say it overperforms for 3 mana every single time. Like, yes, you don't have to, if you can't pay the 1, you don't have to sacrifice that creature. You can sacrifice anything. It could be a land. Usually it's like they'll sacrifice excess lands if they have it, but you're still sacrificing something. Like the best case scenario, the worst case scenario for this is like the opponent is loaded on treasure tokens and they sacrifice that or something. Then it's not that great. You got rid of their
Or they're
treasures.
playing green.
Or but you still get rid of a bunch of their lands. Like I cast it on stream last week. It was a week from when this goes up at least, and it was again a blowout. I've cast it on Commander Clash a bunch. I think it's done very well every single time. 3 mana for this. It can't like, and it's so easy for you to build around it. You just play it in a deck that doesn't have a lot of creatures in it, and it's 3 mana. It's 3 mana. It's like it's under $1. It's under $1, and it's so cool. And it makes some sacrifice. It gets rid of indestructible. It permanently gets rid of stuff. Seth loves that, even though he put it as a B. That's amazing. All right, Seth,
I have it at okay. I have it at a B, but not for any of the reasons you have it as a B on. I have it as a B, even though I think it's pretty bad, purely because I play on Magic Online, and one of the tricks of Magic Online that people do is they tap out so they can be lazy and just like pass through their turns without doing anything. So this card is actually really good in Magic Online, Commander, because you get the people who lazily tap all their lands for no reason and then they can't pay for it. It's a little dirty, but it does work really well on the Magic Online meta. As far as being actually a good card, my experience has been watching you cast it and people sacking a couple lands and then murdering you. That's what I remember of seeing
that's
this,
what I also
this cast.
Silver wonders why he dies first all the time. He just keeps casting Fade Away. Like he can't deal with the board.
Or Chaomancer Fade Away again.
It's 3 mana. It's such value.
I do legitimately like that this is the only other card that can permanently kill things. If it was you have to sack the creature, I think it would be really powerful. I think it would be much more powerful. But the fact that it's Commander, we live in a world where a lot of decks have treasure tokens, you got curses, you got Dockside, like you don't run into that too much when you're playing this, that you have a lot of opponents who just have kind of like useless stuff they can sacrifice and it does nothing.
Didn't you
'cause,
just
you got like
you
1/1
also
tokens,
said
right?
Consuming Tide is like a C,
Yeah,
right?
How can Consuming Tide be worse?
What do you mean?
Consuming
Permanently
Tide.
gets rid of it.
Well, you're
Yes, that's true.
living in Christmas land where people just automatically if they don't have any mana up, like, and yeah, if you're getting them on Moto, sure, whatever, that you got them. But outside of those situations, this, first off, like, it only deals with creatures, whereas Consuming Tide bounces everything, gets it all off the board, and leaves them with their best thing. Oftentimes, I will just pay the mana to keep the one I want, right? And at way less of a cost. And you didn't draw any new cards, by the way, just stating that part. And then, I don't know. I can't see how this is better than Consuming Tide.
But you lose so many permanents for 3 mana.
So for years I've been trying to play this card, right? So every week Tomer's like, Richard, I want to do a Fade Away short. It's like, Richard, how about Budget Commander Fade Away? Okay, Richard, top 10 underplayed blue cards Fade Away. So every time I build a blue deck, I'm like, okay, is this the chance for Fade Away? And I put it in my deck and I think, and I'm like, nah, get it out.
You don't give it a shot. That's why you haven't been
seen you
basking
cast
in the
it.
glory.
Like,
We've all been there.
people will just sack 1 or 2 lands and keep their most valuable things and then go to town. Like, it just like thins out the garbage, right? But like, that's not why you were board wiping to begin with, right? So Consuming Tide, I think, is way better, and I didn't even think that was playable. So I'd rather play Consuming Tide.
Let's
before I play the
let's
Fade
slow
Away.
there, okay? Let's slow it down there, right, Richard?
Right? They're like, I got a Sun Titan and a sword or something. I sack 2 lands and I just smack you and get everything back, right? Like, it doesn't wipe what you want to wipe, right? Now, if you have like something that prevents sacrificing or something, then maybe you can combo this into something useful, right?
Or you had Consuming Tide, they'd have to choose the Titan or the sword, right? Right?
That's better than this, right?
Yeah.
I swear.
Okay. Cool. That's good enough for me.
I swear.
And the other thing is, Tomer, like, I don't even know if budget's that much of an upside. Just looking at the list of cards we're talking about, Cyclonic Rift is expensive, but like most of these cards are pretty cheap. So I don't even know. If you can argue that it's a good budget
cheap for a
choice
reason.
because
I
you could be playing
really
Whelming
like
Wave or Ether Spouts or any of these other cards we're talking about.
I really like it in creature light decks. And it's also very splashable, so it's not even restricted to blue. No joke. I think it's very good. I
This
think
is
it's
like
very good.
you agitate everyone without doing anything, right? You're like, oh, I just made you
What do you
sack all my
mean?
tokens, and then I'll use like my remaining beefy creatures to murder you because you just annoyed
It's
me.
so much of a non-factor. I'm not even agitated. I felt like you just paid 3 mana.
All right. I'll get you.
I don't even have creatures,
You'll
so
see.
maybe that's why I don't care.
I know. For Krim, it's not very good against Krim. I'll admit that because Krim doesn't play creatures and he never taps out. But
Even
think
in my
like
creature
90%
decks,
of
I
the
don't
time.
tap out.
But like in my paper decks, like 90% of my decks are tap out decks. Like they just tap out.
Wouldn't you
like,
rather just
naturally.
play like a Blasphemous Act or a Toxic Deluge and not deal with any of this
You're in
Punisher
blue!
mechanic, right?
Or a
You're
consuming
blue.
tide.
Then play all the other blue ones we talked about.
No, these
All the-
can't get rid of creatures for 3 mana.
But for two
But this
more
can't
mana,
get
you
rid
do
of creatures,
instant
though. That's the thing. Let me ask you, Tomer. Let me ask you. How many times have you actually killed a creature with this? Let alone all the creatures
Pretty
with
often.
this.
Like if you have a bunch of creatures and you have like 10 creatures, what are you gonna do? You're gonna sacrifice 10 lands? Probably not.
I'll sacrifice
You're gonna keep
Okay.
like
the
2
six
creatures.
terrible creatures, and
You don't
then
keep- but then I got rid of a huge chunk of your board for 3 mana.
But you
And it's
didn't
like if they were
accomplish
so
the
terrible,
goal.
you wouldn't have
the
played
goal
them.
was to catch up, right? When you ended up was everyone just kept their best things and you're still behind and you spent a card at 3 mana.
I
consuming
what?
tide drew cards. By the way, just saying.
I don't know how to convince you other than to get you with it. I'll get you with it. Don't you worry. I'll get you with it. Fine. We'll move on. What's the next one?
right.
Crim.
Since
Wait, Crim,
I,
Crim,
I,
you wanna
I
say it.
had to let Tomer go for that one, but I had to talk about this card. All right, so it's Etherize. You've seen this because now they've put this in a lot of it's reprinted tons of times. It's in a bunch of different decks. It's 3 and a blue, instant speed, by the way. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. So usually you just kind of pants one person with this because unless for some odd reason multiple people are attacking at once. But yeah, I think this card is pretty sweet at a B. I rate this at a B because the instant speed, it's only 4 mana and you're bouncing all it does have a little bit of a drawback in that, yeah, like maybe the best creature or something that has like this static effect, like that's just sitting on the board, they're not going to attack with, right? Other than that, you bounce a ton of stuff for 4 mana. And I like that at instant speed.
The
It only
rest of
gets
us
one
gave
person.
it C's, by the way.
Yeah, it only
don't-
gets one person.
I think of this like a super fog almost. It's like a fog that
It
fogs
is.
for a couple turns because you got to make someone recast their stuff. So I think it's powerful, and I think you also get a lot of value out of talking about it. We've had a lot of like non-attacks because of the fear of the Etherize on Commander Clash. So I think
You only cast
it's-
like once ever.
yeah, it hardly
Yeah,
ever gets
exactly.
cast, but people definitely play around the possibility of it being cast because it's an instant. So I do think it has value, but I have it more as a C. I think it's fine, but a lot of times I'd rather have something that resets everyone board rather than just pantsing the one person.
Unless you have white, then you can settle a wreckage and then Shadow Realm them, pretty much.
I think my problem with this card is that too often I'll be like in a deck that I think it's probably best in a Drago deck where you're always having 4 untapped mana. But if your deck isn't designed to always consistently have 4 untapped mana up, then you're basically kind of like waiting for your opponents to go all in to swing at you to get them with it. And while that
Swing
is
at
like
anybody.
a very entertaining play, sometimes I would just really, I need to deal with a threat and I can't wait for it to just attack me randomly. That's so situational.
I mean, it's great for Crim decks because Crim's going to leave 4 mana open anyway, but
Yes.
there is a cost to passing and leaving this up if you don't have other things you can do because maybe you don't get attacked and then you just wasted 4 mana and kind of like skipped your turn for no value. So I think it does work. It's best in decks like Crim plays, the Drago decks with a lot of things you can do on your opponent's turns.
I generally just run instant speed removal. Like if I'm afraid of somebody attacking me with a big thing that I need to deal with, then I'd rather just have like a Pongify in my hand because if they're not attacking me and I still need to deal with a creature, then I can still deal with it whenever I want to, right? So
That's only
Creatures you want to
one
remove that are not
creature.
attacking you. So I think Engulf and Evacuation, it's worth the tax of having the mana base or paying 1 more to actually be able to consistently do this. But this is a funny meme.
it is.
I
funny.
do
love
think
it
that
for them
once
to-
again, it has to be stated: the creatures do not have to be attacking.
They have to attack
you.
someone.
Yes.
They have to
That's-
attack
yes.
someone.
But if
That
somebody's
is
like,
relevant.
if somebody's gonna I don't know, is a deck that doesn't even care about attacking and is gonna win through other means, like a combo or something.
Right.
I want ways to affect their board without needing them to attack first. But I think
Fully.
entertainment value, it's really good. I think I think Aether Rise is one of my favorite cards in terms of Commander Clash, because I think it's always entertaining to see somebody have it in their deck because it leads to really cool moments. So I would rate it higher for that. We have another card though that is very similar to Aether Rise, so we kind of bunch it together. Aether Spout, and that's
I love this card.
that's Krim. You say it too, actually. Ha!
Oh,
What does it do?
okay.
I forgot
So
who
Ether,
it was on.
Ether
so.
Spouts is 3 and 2 blue, instant speed again. For each attacking creature, its owner puts it on top or the bottom of their library. This is awesome. I love this card too, because this one doesn't put it into their hand. It puts it either on top of their deck or on the bottom of their deck. So they can't just replay it. So if they really want their creature, you know what their next draw is going to be. And if you're playing something, let's just say like Rogues, where I know I'm going to mill the top of their library, that's even better. So they'll put the things that they perceive that they'll be drawing, and then I'll just go ahead and mill them out, or mill the top batch of cards. So I think there's a lot of fun to this card, and it's great in like little tempo decks.
You have it as an A, I have it as a B, and Richard and Seth have it at C's. And I like this one a lot more, actually. I agree with you, Krim. Like, you raise it up a bit, I raise it up a bit. The difference between Aether Rise and Aether Spouts is 1 mana. I think you're only going to be running these cards either way in a deck that can consistently hold up 4 mana. You know, like a Draw Ghost style deck. I wouldn't really run it outside of that. And the difference between 1 and 2 mana in a deck that reliably keeps up all of its mana anyway isn't so big of a deal for me. And Aether Spouts is just backbreaking because it causes severe card disadvantage to your opponents. Because instead of putting it back to their hand, you're denying them card draw for it, or you're removing it if they put it into the bottom of their library. So I think it's a far more I don't know the word potent form of removal, because it's not just balance, it's like actual removal. It's removing the top cards of their library, or they're the next draws, or it's putting it in the bottom, which effectively kills them.
It's removing the draw and the board, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty major.
Yeah. So I will run this in a draw go deck.
I never play it for some reason. I don't know if I forget about it, but for some reason, I occasionally play Aether Eyes. I never play Aether Spouts, and I guess I don't know why. I don't know. I guess I don't play Drago decks, and 5 mana is tough to leave up. If you're not playing Drago, like, I can kind of see an argument for 4 mana in a non-Drago deck, even though even that's painful with Aether Eyes. 5 mana, though, boy, that's just a lot of mana to leave up if you don't have something else to do with it.
Yeah, it's just slightly better Aether Eyes, or maybe it's like debatable, like whether you want to pay that 1 mana for basically hosing the person you're casting it on, but it's too conditional for me, right? Like, you have to wait for combat. If you're playing creatures, I guess you can deploy your creatures and hold up 5 mana, so that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's just too conditional. Like, I'd rather just play something conditional, right? Like, I don't want to sit here and wait for you to attack me or goad you into attacking me to then just play the subpar board wipe, right? Like, I just play whatever blue or red or white board wipe I have anyway, right? And this doesn't deal with non-creatures, so I don't know. It's just meh. Like, you can play it if you have specific use cases, but I don't think it's that good in a generic deck.
I think, like, if you have this up, plus you also have, counter magic, plus you also have instant speed draw. So it's like, if I get attacked, I'll use my Aether Spouts. If there's somebody tries to cast a game-winning spell, I'll counter it. If not either of those things happens, I'm just going to draw some cards. Like, I feel like those are the decks that are going to love this. Also, I just love how backbreaking it is. Yeah.
It really is. And, of course, if you're playing like a rogue deck, you'll usually have tons of things like Rogue Class, Gonti, Siphon Insight. So oftentimes, you could probably have an idea of what I'm doing here. So, like, something where I'm going to draw this off the top of your deck.
Yeah. If you have synergies with it, I think it gets better. All right, moving on. We got a card that I played a bunch back in the day, but I feel like it's kind of just fallen out of favor a little bit. This is Washout. It's a 3 and a blue sorcery that says return all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hands. So basically, if you choose a color, and then everybody who has a permanent of that color will put it back to their hand, including like multicolor spells. So if you choose green, then every single green card or multicolor green card goes to their hand, and it will also hit colored artifacts. It will also
Tomer
hit
knows how I'm using this card.
enchantments. Yeah, I mean also Warp Devotion. I mean beauty.
Yeah.
But also it's 4 mana sorcery for a very like asymmetrical bounce, which is very tantalizing. But I know from personal experience, I played this a lot, and I've had a lot of blowout moments. It's a very cool card. But these days, I will probably only run it in like I liked it in Blind Seer, the gimmick deck where you could turn people's permanents into colors you want, and then you could bounce it with washout. But like it's I don't know. There's
That's a
so many
combo
other
piece.
bounce.
That's not a board wipe.
I feel like this was a card that was good maybe a decade ago, before Wizards started printing for Commander. Like now they print a bounce spell every blue Commander deck. Like every year we're getting multiple new mass bounce spells. So I feel like I don't know if it stands up to the test of time at this point. And also, this is a card that kind of hoses one person a lot of the time because you're only getting one color. And it even has additional restrictions to it because you don't really know what colors people are going to be playing, or maybe they're a 3-color deck or a 5-color deck, so only some of their permanents are a color.
Seth, please.
So
It's
I feel like it's even, but it's even worse
Everybody
than
has
like,
green. Everybody has green.
but not necessarily. You don't know that. So I feel like it has the ether eyes problem. We're only hitting on like one person, but even worse.
I blindly play Acid Rain, so you're talking to the wrong person.
Yikes. By the way, C's for me and Krim, and Richard gave it D's. Or Richard and Seth gave it D's.
Cold,
Yeah.
like stone unplayable. Like, yes, if you have a color manipulation deck, you could play this, but even then, I don't even know that this is like one of your better cards in your deck. Right? It's like still kind of questionable, right? So
I mean, if you're playing Blind Seer, you have other problems too. That's not a good deck.
and
Yeah,
it
good
just
in
creates
blind-
anti-fun as well, right? It just singles someone out too. So I would say it's stone unplayable.
Blind Seer is like the epitome of anti-fun. as someone who has played Blind Seer, if it actually starts working, like it's such a cool idea on paper, but then you get there and like, oh, I just stop people from playing Magic. That's what I'm doing. So yeah, Washout is not a. If you see Blind Seer, you should probably hate them out, even though they probably can't defend themselves. Anyway, moving on to
Especially green.
this is a version of Washout that I actually like a lot more for mono blue decks. And I was about to read it, but it's not my turn. It's Richard's turn. Read it. Wait, no, it's
I think
Seth's turn.
it's
Sorry.
might be
Oh my
my
god.
turn.
I am falling
You're
apart.
All good. 6 mana, including 3 blue mana. Sorcery. Bounce all non-blue creatures. Return all non-blue creatures to their owner's hand. So very expensive. Very sorcery speed. But if you're mono blue, it is potentially one-sided. So we have a lot of C's on this. I think everyone has C's. Tomer had a B. I bounce back and forth between B and C because I can see an argument if you're some sort of like mono blue aggro or tempo deck where you're going to try to use this to clear the way to one-shot kill someone or something. That's where I could see this having value, but I bounce it down to a C because I honestly don't think I've ever played this card even in my mono blue decks for some reason. So I could see how it could be valuable, but I've never actually seen it do its thing actually in person.
It always seems great in theory, and then when I add it to the list, even in the mono blue decks, and then I take it out, I was like, no, this is just too much. It's 6 mana. I don't even think I've ever
Cyclonic
hit
Rift
5 mana.
Cyclonic Rift with Overload is 1 more mana. Single more mana, and you get all your opponent's non-land permanents, and there's no color restrictions, so.
And, of course, Consuming Tide is 2 mana less.
Oh no.
Just saying. And draws cards.
I'll still run it in mono blue decks. I don't know. It's asymmetrical in mono blue. 6 mana is a lot. It's sorcery. I mean, it was better back in the day, obviously. And it's gotten a little bit old these days. But you know what? Like if I'm running a mono blue aggro-y style deck where I don't want to bounce my own stuff, like I'm not a blink deck, I'm gonna run this. It's pretty decent. It's not gonna hit my stuff. It's gonna hit your stuff usually.
I feel Tomer overrates asymmetry because
I love asymmetry.
like it's true it's asymmetric, but you need to kill someone like right there on that combat, right? So you need to have a giant board. It's not like an overrun where you can do it and kill someone, right? You're just bouncing, and then because you're now arch enemy, you're so far ahead of everyone. Everyone's just gonna redeploy their stuff and murder you, right? So this needs to actually end the game when you do some kind of asymmetrical effect like this, and if it doesn't, then you just killed yourself. And I feel this is more of the you killed yourself card. Right, so the best case is sea monsters. You have like 40 power on the battlefield. You inundate, and then you kill the most threatening person and hope you can deal with the last person. Right? Yeah, I can see that case. But other than that, like you're gonna bounce everything. People play it all back and be upset at you and then kill you.
I also think it suffers from the fact that blue just isn't a great creature beatdown color. Like if this was a Gruul card or a green card, it would kind of be insane. But look at the most played blue creatures. It's like
We just talking about sea
Oracles and
monsters.
Mulldrifters and yes, I know it's great in sea monsters,
Not
sort
in
of.
your
Yes.
decks. We're talking about whoa. Tempo? There's so many good tempo plans.
What about like
but you gotta be,
Umesh Sphinx?
and you even gotta be mono blue because you can't. It's not like you can be blue for counter spells, but then play a bunch of good creatures in another color because then you're gonna bounce them all. So I feel like it suffers from its color a little bit too.
All right, you convinced me.
Confirmed,
on this one, actually. I'm
blue
putting it
just
down.
sucks in Magic. So it
I
needs
put
to
it back
be
down to
pumped.
C.
Watsy, anybody on the design team, buff blue, give them hard board wipes. Just give them blue damnation.
No. All right.
called Rivers
This
Rebuke.
one,
No.
this one though, this one is the one that I'm gonna actually convince Richard on. I feel it.
How?
I feel it.
Oh,
This is
wait,
the
never
same
mind.
This is
exact.
the wrong. You
We're gonna
could've
do
had me
this
at Coastal
again.
Breach.
Richard, read it out for us, Richard. This is it.
All right, I gotta
I
look
guess-
up these cards. Hold on.
What?
Please.
Scourge of Fleets?
Seven
You don't know
mana,
Commander
6/6.
All-Star?
When it enters, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So it's good in Sea Monster Tribal. I agree with you.
Exactly.
I'm
We're back
unplayable
to it.
everywhere else.
It's a staple in mono blue. I would look
Okay,
at
okay,
this
okay.
As a mono blue deck. It should have this.
This goes in your creature slot, right? So if you have a reason to be playing a 7 mana 6/6 Kraken, this is amazing.
I think Scourge of Fleets is probably one of the best blue, like mono blue cards you could be running. Honest to goodness. It costs 7 mana, but you have to keep in mind a couple things. First of all, it's asymmetrical. It's Engulf the Shores, which is 4 mana instant speed. This is a 7 mana version of it, but it comes with a 6/6 Kraken, and it's an enter the battlefield trigger. So that means you can blink it to keep getting extra value. If you copy it, like Richard said, you can keep doing it. It's never touching your board. It's just constantly resetting your opponents. It's one of the most devastating. It's one of the best cards in Sea Monster Tribal, obviously, because it's a Kraken. Obviously, I need to get that out of the way. It's a very good reanimate target because, like, if you need to animate a creature that has a board wipe on the stick, you might be a little bit limited on options in terms of even Dimir. I don't know how many Dimir creatures you can just ETB thing. Like, usually they're cast triggers, like Reaver Demon and whatnot. So Scourge of Fleets can actually get that done for you. The other thing that I really like is not just like sea monsters, but also like Blink Deck's Thassa Deep Dwelling. It's really good in, and it's really good in clone decks like Orvar the All Form. Orvar, like if you have Orvar on the battlefield and you have Scourge of Fleets, you might as well just scoop up at this point because you're never going to have another creature on the battlefield ever again because it's going to keep bouncing all your crap over and over again at instant speed. And they're also 6/6s, so they're gonna get the job done too. Like not only are you getting your board reset, but you're putting a 6/6 on the battlefield. And every single time you're cloning this or copying this or blinking this, you're still getting punched in the face for at least 6 damage. So that's why I really like it. Like this effect on a creature is super huge for me.
I have it as a B because I think it's good in sea creature decks. we're back to that again. I don't see this as a mono blue staple. Like it's a lot of mana. It's got the same restriction that we talked about earlier with Engulf the Shore, where you need a lot of islands. So yes, there's shenanigans with blinking if you get a ton of islands, but I don't know. I feel like it's pretty narrow and only good in specific decks.
I feel like
it's
I need to
staple
get to a
blue.
podcast topic of you need to run more basics. Like this is where it's gearing up to. I think everybody's
Once
My
again,
running too many
back to
basics.
basics.
My MDFCs,
Yo!
Tomer.
Okay,
Basics
I have a
are
question
really
for
good.
you guys. Let's say there's an 8 mana card, okay? And it's a it's a modal card that says like deal 40 damage to an opponent or wipe the board. Okay, do you consider that a board wipe? Because I feel like this is like a win con with like a quasi board wipe stuck onto it. Like you would never put this in your board wipe slot, but you would put it as one of your creature slots, and it just happens to board wipe sometimes. So like if it's overcosted, but then it does something else that's spectacular, like is that a good board wipe or no?
I think you're running this for its ETB though. No,
I am running it for the ETB.
Yeah, it's not like a 2020.
But if it was a 7 mana, it was just so you're just playing as a straight 7 mana like asymmetrical board wipe.
It's an asymmetrical board wipe that you can abuse its ETB. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm oftentimes like I play this in my clone deck and it's so good. Like I got the whatever.
Yeah, that's because your clone synergies are helping you there, right? But if you literally had no clone synergies, no blink synergies, you would just slap this in and be like 7 mana asymmetrical.
Yeah.
Bounce.
Well, I mean, originally that's what it is, right? Because it is just a 7 mana bounce ETB effect, and the fact that I can clone it is where I lock the table out. The first one is just to like reset. The cloning on it on top is when like pretty much the table can't play anything, and that feels good.
I'll give you a C. I'll give you a C on it.
Yes! We did it! We got there!
It's not still unplayable. I mean, there's a lot of use cases that Tomer laid out that are more than just sea monsters, but I still don't know that I would just put this into mono blue decks.
Yeah. It's great.
That's the C. We got the C. We got the C out of Richard.
I think it should at least be. I think this could be legitimately a B.
I think it's solid B. I like it a little bit more.
Right? B, and then C for me.
I read a lot of basics in my mono blue deck stuff. So. Yay!
You did it,
Job
Tomer.
well done. Okay.
It took 19 cards, but you did it.
We got that. We got that.
You convinced me to spend 7 mana when I could be playing like 1 mana for a Blasphemous Act or like 3 mana for a Deluge, but 7 mana we're good.
We're gonna work on the Whelming Wave and the true All-Star of Floodgate, but that will be another time. I'll work you towards the Floodgate eventually. We're gonna cap things off with one last card. And that's going to be one of the newer cards that we haven't really gotten a chance to play with because it's not available online. I don't think. Is it? I don't even know actually. This is Perplexing Test, and it might be online. It may not be. It's like Schrodinger's thingy because most stuff from Commander sets these days don't show up online. It's a 5 mana instant, 3 and double blue. It's a Moto spell that you get to choose one. Return all creature tokens to their owner's hands, and return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. So either you're bouncing all creature tokens, or you're bouncing all non-token creature tokens. I gave it a B. Actually, Krim, Seth, and I all gave it Bs. Richard gave it a C. My take on it is that it's like a staple in token decks. Because I love its instant speed. It's the same price as Evacuation, but like Evacuation is very bad with tokens because you don't get to return them to your hand. They're just effectively destroyed when they leave the battlefield. This is a great way to break the symmetry on that, where you're not touching your tokens. Everybody else's stuff gets bounced though. So it's like an Evacuation plus for token decks. And tokens are a very popular archetype in Commander. It's not even more popular than sea monsters, I would say. So any blue
I gotta ask you, Tomer, what are the blue token decks? Like Brutaclad?
Brutaclad.
Are there any
Adrix
other
and
ones?
Nev. Adrix and Dev is the new one. There's not a ton. I think that is a mark against it. Like,
Essex or whatever is the other Simic one. You know, come on.
I mean,
it's there are a lot of token decks, but they're not blue usually. That's the problem, right?
You can partner it. You can, come on.
it is legitimately awesome in any blue token deck. I think there is an issue that there's not a ton of blue token decks.
Follow footsteps make tokens.
You can do the same thing we were talking about with Inundate, where you can bounce all your opponent's stuff, theoretically, because they're not playing tokens, and then you just smash them with all your tokens, and you keep your stuff alive. So I do really like it in token decks. And it is on Magic Online. I looked it up. It is one of the rare Commander Precon cards from the last year that is actually on Moto.
Well, it's amazing.
So
we can play it in all our blue token decks. Dozens of us.
I think I can't put it in the same class as Evacuation and Engulf the Shore. It's definitely a peg lower. There's not enough token decks. Like if this was like green or something or white, then I'm like 100%. I agree with you, right? But there's just very few blue token decks. So
I think that means
in
you
those
need
decks,
to.
this card is nuts.
I think that means you got to
what about
bump Evacuation
Scarab God?
up, Richard. That's the issue. You need to bump up the other
If you
ones.
bump Evacuation up to A, what are you gonna rank all the like real board wipes? The white ones and the black ones, right? They're all S now because they're like very superior to these blue ones, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Well, except for their sorcery. I will
true.
still. I do not joke about that. I genuinely value instant way
Evacuation,
higher.
like Evacuation has an upside to it in that it's instant. The rest of these are like just downsides and you're just coping because you're blue, right? But Evacuation actually has some kind of point, right? It's up, but white has route or whatever, right? Like you still have like instant speed in other colors, right? But the rest of these just cope. Evacuation, I can see a use case for.
Not consuming tide though.
That's cope.
Fade away.
That's
It's
not a
pretty
that's-
unique. I don't know.
That's a good card. That's just a
That's
good card.
the one
Yeah,
card
Fade Away's a
Crim
great
makes an
card.
exception for his instant speed rule is somehow
yeah.
consuming tide.
Because it replaces itself. It's easy to
Yeah.
see how Crim rates cards. It replaces itself.
Yeah.
I always have to play against 3 people. So the thing here is I have to assume that I can keep up with them, and it replacing itself is big.
All right, we gotta
right.
round it out. So top 3. So normally our top 3 are all S classes, but today we're gonna have to dig deep. What are our top
I think
3?
I think our
Not-
top 3
I don't think we have to
non-cyclonic
dig
rifts is to
deep.
keep it a little bit spicy because obviously
non-cyclonic
cyclonic rifts.
rifts. I only have 2 though. Tomer. Okay, you
I
guys go
will-
first.
You're
Let me
gonna have to
find
dig
one.
deep.
Let me
You're gonna have
find
to dig
one.
deep, Richard.
Let me find one.
Easy.
All right, Richard, we'll come back to you then. So, Cyclonic Rift is obviously everybody's top 1, and it's not even close. So we're just gonna skip that. What's 2, 3, and 4 for you, Seth?
So I only had 2. I had 1 S tier, Cyclonic Rift, 2 A tiers, and then a bunch of B tiers. So Curse of Swine, Evacuation, 1 and 2, probably with Evacuation on top. For my third one, I think I'm gonna go Engulf the Shore. I think that's number 3 for me, the 1 B tier that makes the list.
Krim, how you feeling about it?
Well, so my 2 A's, I got to go with them. I got to go with Evacuation, and I got to go with Ether Spouts, and then I'm going to go Consuming Tide as my B.
as the top one, right?
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
As the top one. B first, and then the 2 A's.
Right. Okay, for me, I really like my Scourge of Fleets. I really like my Fade Away, and I was gonna say Floodgate because it's not even on the list, so I can't say it. I don't know. They're all so good. Engulf the Shores.
Consuming
Yeah, that
Tides.
one I play
Yeah.
a lot. I
I
play
agree.
Engulf the Shores a lot. That's a good one.
Tover.
Floodgate really though.
Tide.
Floodgate really.
Please.
All right.
Fade Away's S tier. I should probably put an S tier right beside Cyclonic
Fade
Rift.
Away is above Consuming Tide. I still don't understand that.
I have Evacuation and Engulf the Shore at B. So now I gotta promote a C class to the top 3.
Perhaps
Consuming
a
Tide.
Sea Monster staple could make it. To
I'm
B.
thinking Coastal Breach or Curse of Swine, and I think
There
it's gonna
is
be Coastal
no
Breach.
way either of those are going to be
Those
better
are
than
doo-doo
Consuming Tide,
tier.
Richard.
They are doo-doo, that's why they're C, but I have to choose one here, so I think just 4 mana, basically unconditional, but the condition is you have opponents.
Consuming
right?
Tide?
No, Coastal Breach, I'd rather get the clean
That's
white
not
than-
unconditional. That could potentially be like 5 mana. 6.
That is true, but I think it's close enough. I think
Oh.
it's close
No.
enough that I'll go Coastal Breach.
No.
At least
Richard,
it
no.
doesn't leave their best stuff behind.
But I feel dirty about it. This should have been a top 3 with Cyclonic Rift.
Well,
It'd
what's
be
the point of
perfect
saying?
for me.
What's the point of having a top 3 if you know the first one for everybody? That's boring.
to
Richard,
show
we got
to show the great distance that you should probably not play what's on like number 3.
No.
Here, that the first one is just so far superior, and that all the other colors are so far superior that you need to kind of dig deep.
Well, we didn't. So that was our list for the blue board wipes. We didn't touch on colorless, and I know a lot of people. I probably should have prefaced this whole discussion at the beginning that we're not doing colorless. I'm probably gonna throw it in the editor notes at the beginning that we didn't do colorless. But the reason why we didn't do colors is because we wanted to talk about a bunch of blue stuff. But obviously, colorless options like Ugin and Nev's Disc and all his dust, these are all available to blue decks as well. So you might want to be running those over some of the blue cards that we were talking about. We just want to focus on blue. We might do colorless board wipes in the future, though. Also, honorable mention to Cyclone Summoner, Profaner of the Dead, and my favorite, Floodgate. We ran out of time. So sorry we didn't get to you. Floodgate is S tier, though, and I will not take any comments. So that's it for everybody.
Comments are disabled for the video.
Comments are
Floodgate is the best
disabled.
card in all
Well,
of
we
that.
got the dislike ratio disabled, so you can't dislike on Fadeaway anymore.
Someone check the
and-
Spotify comments. Can we disable them?
Disable them all. So that's it, everybody. That was our podcast. That was our top like 20-ish blue board wipes that we got through. If you enjoyed this sort of discussion, be sure to like and subscribe to help support the channel and help us grow. And if you believe that we left out any particular blue board wipe that we didn't discuss, please let us know in the comments section or reach out to us at hashtag ClashMail at Twitter. It's probably the easiest way to reach us all very easily. Because we this is not an exhaustive list. We might have something might have slipped through the cracks. And also, if you disagree with any of our opinions on any of them, you can give us your own ratings on your top favorites as well. And you can also leave a comment on why Fadeaway is the best of the best, and that's also great too. I'll probably pin that one. We'll see.
Just put up a poll.
That's it,
for
everybody.
Fadeaway. We need to put up a poll.
Fadeaway S tier forever with Floodgate,
Is
and
Fadeaway playable? Is the poll.
Yeah. If I gave it to you for free, would you proxy over it or would you keep it? What would you do?
Should Tomer
Imagine
be
you write,
fired
like,
for his
Island
opinions
on
on
the
Fadeaway?
I'd have a heart attack. All right. That's it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. And until next time, friends. See ya.